Hey everybody, so today we're going to talk about things to consider while you're practicing. And I know a lot of people, they are going into practicing blind and because they're learning on their own, or maybe you're a well-seasoned practicer, but maybe these are certain things that some of you can take and use to make your practicing a lot more efficient. So perhaps one of the most important things is tone. When we're trying to produce something out of our instrument, we generally want to have the best type of tone, or the tone that we want to convey. So beyond the metronome, I think a smartphone is probably going to be your best friend in a practice session. Using this while you do a tone exercise, for instance, like a long tone exercise, which we've talked about in the past, which is generally just a very legato exercise. It's good to have a recorder like this just on your stand to record your beginning and your end, and then you can listen back to it either after your practice session or just after you do your exercise, so you can see whether your beginning is strong, your middle is strong, or at the end whether or not you're falling flat. Having one of these is basically having like an extra set of ears that listens beyond the head voice or the pre-recorded anticipation that we all tend to have. Sometimes we think in our head of how we play, and sometimes that's not necessarily what is actually being portrayed out. So it's good to have one of these and listen to that and see how you can improve. And I find this tip has saved me lots of time throughout my life. I even used tape recorders back in the day, and I feel they both do the exact same thing. It's just an extra set of ears. Next thing I think about when I'm practicing is my memory, and to have a good long-term memory on the things that I'm learning, whether it's a new scale, whether it's a new piece, whether it's a new exercise. So for instance, with scales, I like trying to learn them without looking at the page. I like turning around or closing my eyes when I learn scales, and seeing how far I can go, and then stopping if I do have to stop, and making notes on where I messed up, whether I missed that sharp or whether I missed that flat, or did I not switch went back down at the octave. And I like doing that for at least 2 or 3 minutes, and that really kind of helps me think inside the head and inside my brain, and developing those muscles and developing those associations with those types of scales, instead of just looking at the page and burning it in your eyes. I think it's good to also understand that there's these blocks that you have to learn and have them embedded in your head. So be sure to practice those and make sure you can go all the way up and then go all the way down, and practice in that manner. It can really help your memory. Also be sure to use a metronome. The metronome can be a very good guiding block to how to keep your scales nice and smooth throughout your entire learning exercise. And you can use these techniques when you're learning other types of scales, like thirds and other intervals, and it really does help developing the memory and developing a reliance on yourself and not just the page. Another thing to consider while you're practicing is when you're learning pieces or etudes. I know a lot of us, and I'm guilty as well, is that I used to practice from beginning all the way to the end. I'm going to try to go from the beginning and no mess ups. Even if I mess up, I'm going to go all the way to the end. Well, that takes a lot of energy out of you. Learning a whole entire piece or etude, or practicing through it in kind of jumbles. For the brain, it really is very fatiguing. And if you're learning a piece or an etude and you have to learn it in a certain amount of time, I really encourage breaking it up into pieces or sections, sometimes at 4 bars at a time or 8 bars at a time, or however long the phrase is, and really getting that part down. And if I have 10 minutes or 15 minutes in a day to learn that, I really just focus on one section that day, and then do a short revisit the next day of that section, and then continue on with another block of music, and then mixing those together as well, and then moving on, so forth and so forth, until you can actually put them all together and then do a full solid run through. And then that way your brain is now putting these pieces all together and making a more healthy version of it in your head. Now, in terms of time in your practice session, which we all have to deal with a certain blockage of time. Sometimes we only have 10 minutes, sometimes we have an hour, sometimes we have unlimited time. For the less fortunate ones who only have, let's say, only half an hour per day or half an hour every other couple days, I feel that having a journal of some sort, a physical journal, blocking out the days you practice and blocking out the things you need to practice, I feel that if you have only 30 minutes, most music practicing kind of revolves around 4 groups, or 5 or 6 groups really. And that's tone, articulation, tuning, scales, etudes, and practice. You can jumble a couple of those together. But for instance, in a 30-minute time frame, I would do 5 minutes at the beginning with tone and do a tone exercise and really just get a lot of the air out and really listening to how your tone is that day. 5 minutes of scales, learning a new scale or reinforcing the scale that you're learning from your teacher or one that you've picked for the week. 10 minutes on an etude if you have an etude. And then another 10 minutes with a piece. And like I said, with that same formula as before, breaking into smaller pieces, you get more sense of accomplishment, and you get more sense of progressing in that piece or in that practice session. And if by chance some weeks you have more time for yourself, I would really encourage increasing the time to those several categories. Also adding more articulation section, so you can learn a little bit more about articulation, and also tuning as well, so playing with the tuner and learning the subtle tendencies with intervals when you're practicing with intervals, and adding more time to your pieces and adding more time to your etudes can make a real big difference in your practice sessions. So I hope this information was helpful. If it was, please be sure to hit that like button and to also leave a comment if you have any questions or requests. Also, if you haven't subscribed yet and your first time here, be sure to subscribe. We have plenty of videos here on the Flute channel for you to watch and to learn. So I hope these tips will make your practice sessions more productive and fun. Until next time, see you later.